Hi, and welcome back to this, our fifth and final session. Today I want to talk about supporting the learning of students with additional needs. Now, this would have to be a passion of mine, and it's the reason I entered this field of education, to create spaces for those students who have difficulty with their learning for a variety of reasons, physical, mental, or perhaps emotional. Now, we are often tempted as teachers to rely on the words, the guidance, the instructions of the professionals in meeting the needs of these students. And to be honest, that's what they're there for. That's okay. We need to draw on them as those resources. However, as I have discovered, both in myself and for other teachers that I have coached and assisted in this matter, there is so much that we as teachers can already do in our classrooms with the resources we already have available to us, and that includes those within us. It's just a matter of understanding what you have and how you can utilize it to the best of those for those students. Now, in the classroom, in the face-to-face space and environment that you have left behind for now, you would begin by understanding your students, working out what they can do and how they can work, and this is where we might draw on some of those professionals in that space. And we then move to writing up the curriculum. Now, if we were just looking at what we can do, you might want to use a range of those curriculum frameworks that can help you establish a classroom that is inclusive and suited for all the students. Think of your classroom as less of a space designed for a single type of user and become more like an architect, designing your classroom learning for multiple users. That includes lifts for those who might rise to the top very quickly, steps for those who want to be more active or need to take things a little bit slower or like to have things broken down, and lots of breakout spaces for those who need perhaps a rest. The goal is to get to the top of the building, right? And to admire the beautiful view. How we get there is actually not that important. Now, that actually sounds simple. And to be fair, it can be. But it does require a little bit of innovative thinking and the use of some good curriculum frameworks. And here you might like to explore the use of people like June Maker, Frank Williams, Carol Tomlinson's work, for example, just to name a few. And I've written about them quite extensively on my website, www.kairosct.com. These frameworks provide a range of strategies and activities that are suited for all students at all sorts of ages, and it gives considerations to interest and additional needs. That's what they're designed for, and that's what they're there to be used for by you as the teacher, to help build those inclusive environments in your face-to-face classroom. But it doesn't change in the online world. You need to begin by considering your students, what they can do and how they work. For this, you're going to have a conversation with the student and with their parents. Now, ask them, what are the resources available? What are their capabilities? You already know what they can do in the classroom space. What you need to ascertain now is what they are capable of doing and what resources, both technical and personnel, they have available to do this working in the online space, working from their homes. Having set up a foundational presence, and I discussed that in my day 2 video in this series, if you haven't already viewed that yet, it becomes now a matter of making any additional changes to allow for these students. Now, a clear advanced organizer, as I discussed, showing how all the learning fits together is of course that first place to start. You might add to that an instructional video explaining this to the student. That would be a wonderful addition for them. Breaking it down into those small steps for those who need to go a little bit slower, or showing a gifted student how to advance through it a little bit quicker. You need to be very clear though. Content can continue to be quite static. That's not a problem. But the focus needs to be on what we call message abundancy, balanced against, of course, keeping it simple. So enough information that the learning content can be received by each of your students in a number of different modes. May include reading, video, audio, whatever is required for your students, but not so much that it becomes overwhelming and confusing for everybody. Provide the content too, if at all possible, at different levels. Have you seen the Shakespeare graphic novels in 3 different levels, reading levels? Okay, that's a style of thing that you need to be thinking about. You may need to be a little bit more innovative here, depending on access to appropriate resources and software and other tools. Instructions. Remember, there are 4 core elements: content, instructions, communications, and assessment. And I'm using that same framework here as well. So instructions should be clear. Use checklists, okay? Always appropriate for any student to use. And then students can follow what they are up to, and again, use instructional videos. Keeping them short, probably not quite as long as I've left mine here, but ones that can be used by both the student and their parents to scaffold that learning. All right, that helps them so much. Communications. We've talked about this before. It needs to be regular. And in this case, for students with additional need, it does need to include the parents. Let them know that you are continuing to support their child and them in this new learning environment. You may consider adding in phone conversations with the parents and the students on top of emails and chats that you would have for the broader classroom. But always follow those up with a quick email reminding them of what was discussed. This is going to help them as well as yourself and give you a track record of the discussions and decisions that you've made to support the student as time goes. And of course, assessment. Small steps, break it down, clearly communicate it, and as I said previously, using Bloom's taxonomy to drive those tasks. That way you can level it at the right ability for the students. Some important things to remember. Have a routine. That's important for any student, but particularly for students with additional needs. Like the advanced organizer that shows students where, how, and when to access the learning. It helps the students know when to engage with learning and when to engage with you as the teacher. Remind your students and the parents it's okay to take those breaks. Remember, the breaks and the landings that give people a breather, to take their time, and for the parent not to be the teacher. Okay, that's not their role, and it doesn't need to be. They're going to have enough work supporting their student as a parent. You are still going to be there for them. A little bit distant, but available. So make sure that they understand that. Look, it's a brave new world, and not one that many of you have engaged with previously, or maybe on the fringes, peripherally. But there is help and support available. So feel free to ask questions. Ask me any questions that you have, and I will always answer them. Remember, I have placed a few other videos on my Facebook page and on my Instagram to show you how to set up that online learning. An online learning environment that motivates, that satisfies the student, that engages them in the learning, and of course, most of all, promotes learning. There's also that infographic that I promised you. Well, it's now up, and further information on my website to go and check that out. So at KairosCT for my social media, and www.kairosct.com. And I really look forward to hearing from you about your successes.